Welcome back to Don't Take This Personally,
a podcast about the business of creativity.
We are your hosts,
Gabe Conover
and Cami Oliveria.
Yes, and today we are talking about the ideal client conundrum.
I'm pretty stoked to talk about this. Oh, Gabe's already got the giggles. Yeah. We're 30 seconds in, not even. Okay.
Already ready to ruffle some feathers.
Already ready to ruffle some feathers. So this conversation I'm stoked about because Gabe and I have both been to our fair share of workshops and gotten a bunch of education and whatever it is. And something that comes up all the time is the idea of how to attract your ideal client. This is something that I have sat through hours and hours and hours in workshops about, just like attracting your ideal client.
Sounds like a dream.
And yeah, it sounds good, but for some reason over the years this has always sat with me a little bit weird, and it's only until recently that I was able to like understand and identify why. So this is a topic where I will say, don't take this personally.
I hear a jingle coming our way.
Don't take this personally. Please don't take this personally. Please. We just want to offer a different perspective on this topic, and you know, I'm an anxious person, so I'm going to give many disclaimers throughout this on like, but don't get mad at us because of X, Y, and Z, but I also have some shit to say, so it's confusing.
Right. At the end of the day, we know that we aren't perfect and that we don't always have the right ideas, but we do want to share things that just aren't talked about as often.
That's what we want to do.
That's why this is a perfect topic.
See, I'm already anxious. Yes. I'm already trying to qualify this.
We're not trying to make anyone mad.
Don't take this personally. Here we go. Okay, so the idea of the ideal client. What does this mean? So the idea of attracting your ideal client comes from, you know, as wedding photographers, just being like, who do we want to work with? Like, what kind of weddings do we want to be shooting? How do we attract those people?
How do we stay inspired?
As
artists,
And as a general intention and direction, I don't think this is inherently bad. We're human. We got into this because we're creative. Yes. We obviously have preferences. Like, I am like a little tattooed little rocker chick. I'm of course really stoked and inspired when I get like a tattooed couple, or like I love weddings out in the desert. You know, of course I have preferences. I'm fucking human, okay?
Yes.
So I'm not trying to say that that's bad by any means. Right. And you can use those things to guide your branding choices and to guide what you decide you want to post. And
naturally who you are as a person will attract a certain type of, you know, person as well.
Yes. So do you have any thoughts on this before I could just freaking take it away? So I could this is a rant for me, a bit of a rant. But so what do you think?
I mean, I know that what we think is probably pretty similar, so I think you should just kind of go into it, and then I'll add in my little tidbits.
Okay. So
along the way.
It's good to have preferences. Yes. We're human. You're going to be attracted to certain aesthetics, but I think we like forget that this is also like our job.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but my ideal client is the client who loves my work and wants to pay me my rates.
Correct.
I don't really have much criteria beyond that.
Yeah, outside of that, my like the one criteria I have is like, did they raise any red flags?
Yes.
Then okay, as long as you didn't raise any red flags, then we're good to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so really early on in my career, I went to a workshop that I loved so much, and something they told us was the 3-question rule when you're deciding if you should book a couple. The 3 questions. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about this for so long. Now I'm like, oh, am I rusty on the questions? So when you get an inquiry, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it your aesthetic? Do you like the people? And is it good money? And it does not have to be all 3 of those things. It's very rarely those 3 things. Like when those 3 things happen, it's magic. Like that's like a once a year kind of a situation. But it should be 2 of them. Like if you love the people and it's good money, you're not going to be that bummed if the aesthetic is whatever. It will still feel fulfilling. If you love the people and the aesthetic is spot on for you, but it's not great money, you're still going to feel fulfilled by that wedding. If, you know, the aesthetics there, the money's there, but you don't really like the people, it'll be a good portfolio piece and good money, and it's probably fine. So I let this advice guide me, I would say, up until last year. Something that scares me now is I do talk to so many of my friends who are also photographers or in the industry, and they will say, you know, oh yeah, I will, you know, discount a wedding if it's super marketable. And we've all done this. Yes. Like if it's a venue we really want to shoot out, we'll discount it. Or, oh, this wedding is going to be perfectly like my style and my brand, so I'm going to discount it so I can book more wedding like that.
Or it's an obscure date and we know we won't book it either way.
Yes, yeah. But in this situation, now my fear around discounting at venues I really want to shoot at or aesthetics that are really aligned with me is 2020 and 2021 has taught us and is teaching us that those things aren't promised to us.
Correct.
Like, I can't tell you how many weddings I was so fucking stoked to shoot at because at the venue and like the whole plan of everything. And now the wedding is completely different. Yep. So it's like not that same marketable wedding. And that doesn't mean it's not amazing. That doesn't mean I'm not loving it and it's not fulfilling, but it just means that I have now grown a little bit weary of, you know, taking weddings that are aesthetically really inspiring, you know, for a discount, because I now see you're going to be in a shitty situation if the parts that made you want to discount it don't exist anymore, because maybe a pandemic forced them to change all of their plans, or maybe their venue closed down. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I now see how much of a lot of this is out of our control.
Right.
Maybe that's me getting a little hardened, I don't know, but it has caused me to want to be a little bit more disciplined about my prices, because and think of it more in a business in that way, because I can be like, 8 hours should be charged for 8 hours no matter what venue it is, because the venue could change, the circumstances could change, and I don't want to be in a situation where I've given a discount for something that I now have to fulfill even though all the circumstances have changed. Oh my god, that was my rant. Woo!
And if you tuned in to our last episode, we were talking a lot about the difference between the business brain and the artist brain. And I remember saying something like, the reality is that we're really lucky that we get to be artists, and that sometimes our work gets to be our job gets to be extremely inspiring. And I think it's also important to look at it from that perspective. I used to kind of look at it in a similar way, where I was like, okay, like this wedding or this event, whatever, is super my aesthetic.
Yeah.
I want to shoot it at all costs.
Aesthetic don't pay the bills, son.
But the reality is that if I want to shoot something that is my aesthetic, why am I relying on other people's visions instead of my own?
Because those things aren't promised. They're not guaranteed.
But a shoot that I set up for myself that inspires me is guaranteed, because I'm the one that's making it happen. And it's going to fall in line with my, you know, creative interests no matter what. So I would rather be investing my time in creating a shoot like that than depending on this wedding that I did for a discounted price to fulfill me in that artistic way.
Correct.
And the reality of, you know, the last almost year, is that we've all, as creatives, been forced to really look at our occupation as a job.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're not getting to do as much as we were expecting to do. And our job is on the line in a way, you know? So we have to look at it as a source of income, especially now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people get caught up in the ideal client a little too much, kind of like the quest for the ideal client, when like, no, your ideal client is the person who wants to work with you. Yes. And honestly, I find things I love in every wedding I shoot.
Same.
Even if it's not like my dream aesthetic for whatever reason. I either like love my couple or really connect with them, or I really seek out those moments, or like whatever it is. I never leave a wedding like, oh, that sucked. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
And I now know not to not book weddings if they're not my dream client or whatever, because I have been surprised by couples. Haven't you?
So surprised.
Like, there have been some weddings I booked that I've been like, I don't know about their vision. It doesn't really seem like my thing, but whatever. Yep. Like, work is work. And then I get there and it blows my mind. Or they took my advice on vendor recommendations. Yep. So like, by me being like, here's the planner you should work with, or the florist or whatever, the way it ended up being really fulfilling. Cool. So I don't know. I've just grown really like weary of making judgments about the aesthetic before the thing happens on either way. Either
Yeah.
not getting overly excited about aesthetic because we have learned all of that can go away,
Right.
or on the other side, not being overly critical of
Yeah.
aesthetic because they might really surprise you. I think the only thing you can count on is, do I like these people and are they willing to pay me what my rates are? Like, I
Right.
kind of think those should be the only two
And
questions.
I look at travel the same way too. I think a lot of creatives like to, book travel work at a discounted rate.
Don't even get me started on this.
I'll kind of touch on it a little bit, but I'm sure we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But pretty much, like, I'm in my mind, I'm like, if I'm going to travel somewhere and I'm going to create while I'm gone, I want it to be according to my standards and according to the things that I'm interested in. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm going to Paris, I want to do XYZ type of shoot because that's what I love about Paris. I don't want to do, whatever maybe my client's vision isn't the, I mean, I'll do it if they're going to pay me my full price, but it's not something that I really consider discounting anymore because I want to travel for myself and create for myself when I go there. And if I'm giving someone a discounted rate, I'm taking away, I'm probably losing money, especially if it's a popular date and I could have booked something local at my actual rate.
Yes.
Which can fund my own trip.
Correct.
So it just that's all.
Well, no, I have a lot to say on this, and we're going to talk about travel weddings, and I have a whole episode's
future,
worth
for
of
sure.
conversation to talk about with taking traveling work and things to think about,
Right.
because we both traveled a lot. But I just think it's like, this is our freaking job. And like, yes, it's magic when you get a dream aesthetic, a dream couple, a dream wedding. It's amazing. But I'm going to be really frank with you. Probably less than 5 of my weddings a year out of 40 to 50, I would say, nail that creative
Seriously.
piece in me. And I don't see that as a bad thing, because the creative weddings that really inspire me, I don't know about you, but they really overwhelm me.
They stress you out more.
I put so much pressure on myself. I get so excited. I mean, I get so excited for all my weddings, but there's something when you know it's really going to be your aesthetic.
Yeah.
I usually freak out, and in the moment, I'm not having as much fun, it's very complicated. It doesn't mean I don't love my job. It's very complicated, but the pressure I put on myself, the imposter syndrome that sets in, the anxiety, and a lot of this could just be due to like anxiety I deal with, but those weddings that like really hit all my butterflies creatively, really take a lot out of me.
Yes.
I couldn't do that for all of my weddings in a year, and so I kind of like when the large majority of them don't feel that high pressure to me. I mean, it's always pressure, it's always a big deal, but I don't know, I kind of like that they're not all the dream aesthetic, because those weddings are higher pressure.
Yeah, they really are, because
Yeah.
it's more of an expectation you set on yourself, because you're
Yes.
like, okay, I'm going to use this. This is going to be the work that I showcase everywhere, so it needs to be
Yes.
perfect.
I know, and that's exhausting. That's like a whole
it's an
different level of
exhausting
energy.
mindset. Yeah, and it's a dangerous mindset, I think, for artists in general,
Yes.
because it can just cause us to be too nitpicky,
Yeah.
and then honestly, it could make us do a worse job than we normally would.
Yeah, I have to go through a lot of like mental work and self-talk before weddings, of kind of downplaying that anxiety within myself. I wouldn't say I do a worse job, but I don't have as much fun and I leave way more tired. Whereas the weddings I go into, like, I'm just here to tell the story, and
Totally.
I don't know, it's almost like I go in with a more open mind, and then as a result, I'm way more fulfilled than I thought I would be from that wedding. So like, I don't know, that this is the job, and like
Right.
some weddings just feel like jobs. I've had a few weddings where like the clients, I didn't click with them, and I was like, this was just a job. This was just a job. And that's fine, because this is our job. Like, we're so lucky to have such creative jobs. And I think people get so wrapped up in the, like, every wedding I book has to, like, be perfect aesthetically, and it has to be my style. And it's like, that is crazy. Like, no one else has that mindset
Right.
about their job. Some days are more inspiring than others. That's just, like, the nature of the job.
Right. And this leads into just kind of like our next point about why we just kind of are ticked off about this phrase, I guess, a little bit. And that is that it can really come across discriminatory too, because I think when we get too picky about the types of people that we want to work with, or the types of visions that we are inspired by, it can really make people feel like they aren't special,
Yeah.
and like you don't think they're cool, like
Oh my
they
gosh.
can't sit with you,
How
you
many
know.
times in inquiries have I had people be like, does this sound cool enough for you? That
Mhm.
literally breaks my heart.
Yep.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad that you've gotten that impression.
Yes, it's so true, because what if you were their dream vendor, you know?
Yeah.
What if they've been following you for ages and they
Yes.
reach out to you with their vision and you're just like,
To me,
like, it's heartless. It's literally heartless.
and to me, that's my dream client.
Yes.
My dream
Yes.
client is the person who is like, you are the photographer for
Yes.
me. I see your work and I want it. Like,
I'm investing everything in you.
yes.
Like, the people that I have felt the most appreciated by are the ones who literally planned their budget around being able to afford me.
Yeah.
And like, maybe the rest of their wedding wasn't exactly what they wanted necessarily, but the biggest priority was that they wanted me
That's
to
amazing.
capture their wedding. What?
Yeah.
There's nothing more fulfilling than that.
I know. Yeah. So,
Anyway.
yeah, I could obviously go off about this for a long time, but I do want to get to an important point because I feel like we could tangent rant about this for a long time.
Yes.
But I want to say there's nothing wrong with having a vision of the kind of work you want to attract
Right.
and working that into your branding. I made very strategic branding choices when I moved to California, and I knew, like, you know, I'm not the photographer who needs to travel. I would rather actually stay home and like be with my dog and my husband and like, you know, come home after a wedding. So I made a very conscious decision when I rebranded in 2018. I want this to look like I am the California photographer.
Right.
Like, I don't want to travel. I want to be here. You know, and of course I have like preferences because I'm a person. Like,
Right.
I'm kind of edgy. I like tattoos.
Right.
I love shooting in the desert or whatever. So of course.
And naturally, those people will be drawn to you based on that.
Yeah. So I want to emphasize there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, there's the age-old saying, age-old, I don't know, Instagram age-old a few years, like, you will book more of whatever you're posting about.
Right.
So this is where personal shoots for yourself come in. There's nothing wrong with getting shoots together to try to attract the ideal client. It's like, there's nothing wrong with the quest for the ideal client. Like, make it clear in your branding and how you show up, your presence, all of that.
Share the things that interest you, because
Share
those
the things
people
that
will
interest
find you.
because whatever you share, you will attract more of. So literally nothing wrong with that. Where I get hung up is, okay, you've done everything you can to put your energy out there and attract the right kind of clients. So now I'm going to start turning people away that, like, oh, I don't like that venue, or they don't sound cool, or their aesthetic doesn't sound like my thing. It's like, okay, like, what? You're allowed to do that. You are allowed to. This is just the case for why I think you shouldn't. You're allowed to. I just don't think you should. I don't know. Like,
True.
yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's okay to, like, be on a quest to attract those people. But if you're just shutting people down who you don't think are, like, cool enough or aesthetically aligned, I don't know. That doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you really have to figure out what is important to you as well, because for me, I'm very much like a business type person. I'm very much a businessman. So like, if I'm going to chase after the things that I'm really passionate about, are growth. And so if I'm going to continue growing, like, the reality is I want to shoot about 50 weddings a year, you know, and that's something that makes me feel fulfilled. And if I'm going to shoot that much, obviously, like, I can't be picky, but like, there are people out there who literally do 5 weddings a year. And like, obviously there's more room for that there.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you're the photographer who just wants to shoot a few weddings a year at your dream aesthetic, and you have the other means to pull that off, like you have another source of income, or if you're, you know, making a lot of money doing other things, or you don't need the money, or what, maybe you're charging $20K a wedding and you only got to take a few. I don't know. Maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe that's you, you know? So I guess that's fine, but this is just the case for, like, if you...
From a human perspective. Yeah.
And if you want to have, like, a full-time, thriving, profitable business for years to come, I just want to challenge this mindset a little bit.
Yeah, and I think more of a challenge is, like, kind of going back to looking for this part of your business as an actual job, as a service you are providing, so that you can fund your own inspiring creative projects.
Yes.
And I have really been doing a lot of this recently with, like, the opening of my new studio, where I'm just like, I'm not going to expect anyone to fulfill my creative vision. I'm going to go and I'm going to capture their story as best as I possibly can. And that is my number one goal.
Yes.
But what I'm doing is I'm using the money that I'm making and the extra funds I'm making to create things for myself completely. And that is the only place I am like deliberately looking for inspiration.
Well, because we can't rely on our clients to fulfill all of our creative needs.
Totally.
We just can't. No. And that is when these personal shoots come into play. And then the irony is the more we do of that, we will attract more of the kind of weddings we want anyways, because we'll be posting about, you know, the aesthetic we're drawn to naturally, because if we plan it, we're planning, you know, that's just what we're pulling together. And then the people who connect to that and are attracted to that will kind of follow suit. I think that's really cool. I used to live with a photographer, Carmen Lopez. If you're listening, we love you. We're recording in my office, your old bedroom. I am really proud of her. This is actually something that she's taking really seriously right now. She has a goal for herself to do one styled shoot or personal shoot a month that she is planning from start to finish. So like not a styled shoot that's someone else's vision, that she's hopping on, like, you know, like a full from her brain into from conception to completion. Sounded sexual. From conception to completion in reverse. We're a little immature today. So that is brilliant. Like, I would love to do that too. Like once a month, just like putting all your energy into creating something that you're proud of, that's your aesthetic. And then the result is you'll attract more of that kind of work.
Totally.
Oh my gosh, I'm sweaty talking about this.
And to go back to like the being human perspective too, I think that this also translates into the work that you are sharing on social media. And a goal that I made for myself in 2019 was that because I was getting, this whole topic was like kind of rubbing me the wrong way even then, finding your ideal client and only sharing images of the type of work that you want to do. And that also came across very discriminatory and just plain rude.
I just think it's rude
to me. When like you're only sharing photos of like the weddings or whatever that inspired you, the ones that you liked. So I made a point that I'm like, I'm gonna post something from every single wedding or shoot that I do, because I want everyone to feel like they are special enough to show up on my feed, and that they are beautiful and that they deserve to be, you know, shared publicly, and that their photos are something that I am proud of, because that is the truth. The truth is I am proud of them all.
I experienced that getting photographed by you. I was so stoked when you posted our pictures, and it's like, that's why I make a point to get photographed once a year by a different photographer if possible, so I can like remember what it feels like to be in the client's shoes. And Gabe took our anniversary photos last September, and when he posted our photos, I was like emotional and like reading all the comments, and it like put me in like the client perspective for a second of like what it's like,
so real.
You know, to be shared, and to just be like, oh my gosh, he liked our pictures so much, he posted them the next day. Like, that means so much to me.
It is. It's cool. And my wife and I, like, we've modeled for a lot of photographers as well, and there was one photographer that like we modeled for like a little styled shoot thing, and I don't remember seeing them share our stuff. And like at the end of the day, like, does it really bother me that much? Not really. Like, it's not the type of stuff that I personally get hung up on, but like I'm thinking about it from a client perspective, and I'm like, that would hurt, you know, like how come I am not special enough?
I'm sensitive, so that kind of thing hurts my feelings. I'll say it.
Well, and think about it, dude, from this, like, reality is Cammie and I have very different styles from when it comes to fashion to anything. Like, I'm literally drinking out of her skull mug right now, which is a mug you will never find in my house.
I gave that to you on purpose.
Of course you did.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you noticed how long I was mulling over which mug I was going to give you, but it was intentional.
Oh my God. But reality is, when I did her shoot, I'm sure that she probably noticed, you know, the stuff that I normally like put together for myself is not her style. It's not the type of thing that she would wear. It's not the type of maybe location she would go to. But that didn't matter, because she was my client. She paid me to do a service, and she deserves to feel special. So one thing that I do, because I think a lot of artists have a big problem with this, is regardless of what the wedding looks like, I try my best to really find and create something from that day that matches my personal style a little bit. And
Me too.
you can do it at every single event.
Well,
I promise you can.
Okay, unpopular opinion, I just think you're not doing a good job if you don't feel stoked about at least a few images from a wedding enough to post them. Like,
Right.
even weddings that I'm like, oh, this isn't like my style or whatever, I leave genuinely excited with at least like, oh, those ceremony photos really like touched me, or
Right.
I got great moments, that was emotional, or I love how I captured like the set of portraits. Like, even I almost feel like it can be used as an excuse to not try as hard creatively.
Totally can be used that way.
And I don't mean to ruffle feathers by saying that. I'm not saying you're, you're bad if you don't post photos from every wedding. You're allowed to post whatever the hell you want. I'm just saying I want to use this as like a challenge.
Right.
Like,
we're trying to be human.
Go into every wedding, and as a creator, like a creative person, as a creator, like God complex. As a creative person, as a photographer, as a storyteller, like I want to challenge you going into this next season of weddings. Like, try to find stuff that you're stoked about from everyone, and it will make you fall in love with your work. And yes, like, not every wedding is going to be like the dream aesthetic. That's just like the cream of the crop magic. When it happens, it's like, oh my God, it's absolutely magic. But like at the end of the day, some days are just jobs, and that's okay. Right. That doesn't mean I try less hard.
Right. Right. And people know you too. Like, people know that I love fashion, and people know that I have a very specific style, personal style.
You're way more fashionable than me.
But that just because they hire me, it doesn't mean that they want my style. It just means that they like what I do, they like what I create.
Yeah.
And they're still going to dress themselves, they're still going to be themselves. Yeah.
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 Did we cover everything?
I think
do
we
you
did.
think? Wow, we are doing amazing.
We really are. We have 2 minutes to spare.
We have 2 minutes to spare. I didn't think this was possible.
We did not forget our timer.
No, timer is up and it's on and it's in front of us. But yeah, so I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Yes. I'm probably going to say that a lot over the course of this podcast.
Like 10 times
I know, because I'm a very, now that we have a minute and a half, I'll just say it. I have a very difficult combination of being extremely opinionated, but also have crippling anxiety. So like I constantly say opinions, and then I'll like cry for days about how many feelings I hurt. And I'll apologize for things like 5 months later that people will be like, I didn't even remember you saying that. And I'm like, okay, because I'm really opinionated, but my anxiety makes me think everyone hates me. So this is probably gonna come up a lot. I'm really sorry. I don't want to hurt feelings. I'm not saying you're bad. Little sound from one of the computers. I'm not saying you're bad if you don't post all of your couples or your weddings. No,
definitely not.
I just want to give you something to think about and just say, like, going into this next season, like, try to find things you're stoked about from every single wedding and see how it transforms your work, and just kind of go into booking with a more open mind and a little bit more business minded.
Yes, and I think that this is a really good reason that Cami and I are so good for each other, is that I'm extremely opinionated, but I actually really don't care what people think about me. So I'm a little bit more upfront and blunt and controversial.
I am,
publicly.
And then I try to backpedal. Yeah. Like, I want to say the thing and then I backpedal.
So we balance each other out.
Yeah,
I'll get her to be a little braver, and she'll rein me in a little bit and like be like, "Hey, Gabe, careful."
Yeah, I think this is a brilliant partnership.
Yes.
Well, on that note, thanks for listening.
Yes.
We will catch you next time with a fresh, hot new take on some controversial topic.
Piping hot.
Bye.